Hello and welcome to this quick introduction to Dashmate. Dashmate is a new tool used to set up Dash masternodes with platform services. This is currently possible on testnet, so we're going to be walking through this documentation here today in the testnet setup section of the Dash documentation. You're going to need a VPS if you want to follow along here. I've got one set up already with a non-root user called Strophe. And we're just going to connect to that VPS and get into the shiny new environment, and we'll walk through some of the setup steps there. So what I've skipped so far, which is basically not changed to previous instructions, was setting up the VPS, setting up the operating system, and setting the collateral. These steps are already done. I've got the collateral sent here in my Dash Core wallet. We'll get back to that in a minute. And now we'll just continue on the masternode installation steps. We're going to be following along the Dashmate steps here. And I'm going to basically copy and paste these commands over into my environment. And I'll explain briefly what each one is doing as I do it. So first here we need to add a source to install a newer version of Node.js than ships with Ubuntu typically. I'm using Ubuntu 20.04 LTS here. And this basically adds another repo that we can pull sources from. Next step is to install the dependencies. This is going to install Node.js, Git if it's not already there, Docker, and Docker Compose. That will take just a minute to set all those up. The next step is because Docker runs a privileged service, we need to add our user to the Docker group so that the non-root user is able to instruct Docker to do the steps. This is done from inside Dashmate, so it's all transparent to the user, but it still needs doing in this step. And because we've added a user to a group here, we now need to reload that group into the environment, otherwise it won't be accessible to us. And the final two steps here are to enable Docker and containerd, which runs the containers, to run at startup. So I'll just run both of those commands at the same time there. And now we can move on to the next step, which is setting up Dashmate itself. Dashmate can be installed from the master branch of this repository. So I'm just going to copy that step in there, and it's going to clone it for me. And now I can cd into the Dashmate directory, and we can do npm I or install. I is a shortcut for that, to install the node dependencies there. That'll take another minute. And then the final step here is to link the Dashmate file so that you can run it from anywhere in your operating system environment. That just basically creates a shortcut. And this gives us the ability now to run the Dashmate command. Dashmate has a built-in help system. So you can go Dashmate help at any time. You'll see some basic information like the version of Dashmate, the version of Node.js that it's running on, and then groups of commands here. Commands can be grouped into topics. Topics are commands that have subcommands, and just basic commands like reset or restart that control the node. So let's look at, for example, the status command. We're going to be using this one quite a bit. And there's also some user-oriented help in there, which describes the possible subcommands. So we could right now, without even having a masternode running or a node running, we could get the status of the host. That's the computer that's going to be running all of these services. But now we're going to go ahead and run the setup command. Let me just clear this so we can get it at the top of the screen. Setup is an interactive wizard. Basically, you can choose here using the arrow keys on your keyboard which network you want to be working on. Mainnet is here just for demonstration purposes. Local will set up a completely independent Dash network with 3 masternodes on your local machine for development purposes, and testnet is the one that we're going to be doing today. Here you can choose the type of node, masternode or full node. We're going with a masternode today, and you can see it's automatically detected my IP address, so you don't need to fill this in unless it's detected it incorrectly. And it's also generating a BLS key for me here. If you already have a BLS key generated from Dash Core or from DMT, then you can paste that in here. Make sure that you know both the public and the private key. I'm just going to accept the one that it's generated here. And you can see it's output both the public and the private key for me to use here. There's one little step in the middle there to initialize TenderDash for use, and then we can get started. So the next step is basically going to start the masternode for us. And I'm going to run that while I'm talking because it takes a few seconds. What it is doing in the background here is firstly downloading several images. These are Docker images and they're stored on Docker Hub. And each one contains the information and binaries needed to run a particular service that's necessary for Dash or Dash platform. These include services like DAPI, like Dash Drive, and some support libraries for these services, Dash Core, of course, Sentinel, and anything else that you care to add in the configuration system, which we'll be taking a look at in a minute. So what it's doing now is actually downloading those images, and once they're there, it will spin them up, and then we can look at the status of those images. So let's just wait for a second here while it completes. Okay, and now we have a running masternode, so we can go Dashmate status without any subcommand, and it should show us some basic information about the container that is running at the moment and what it is doing. So we can see we're running Dash Core 0.17, and that synchronization is starting, and the current status is it's waiting for the ProTX registration transaction to appear. This synchronization will take quite a while, so I'm going to pause the video here in a minute, but the way to monitor progress while this is taking place is you can just check the status of the core service. And again, it will query that specific container, get as much information as it can, and display this for you here. You can see it's already detected how many blocks it's going to have to sync. It's picked that up from a remote block explorer, and we're going to begin synchronization here with headers first, followed by blocks as soon as everything is ready to get started. Other services that are running can be viewed with the services command. Some of these won't be able to actually be interacted with yet until synchronization is complete, but you can just make sure that everything is running properly at this point. You see here all of the services that we have started and their versions, container IDs, and the status that they're all running. So I'm going to pause this video here. Synchronization takes quite a few hours, so I will be back later to demonstrate the registration process and how to check the status of Dash platform. Okay, so a few hours have passed here. Let me just check the status of core synchronization. I expect that should be pretty much done or nearly done by now. Yeah, and there we see it. The block height is equal with the remote block height, so synchronization is complete. The status, which was previously showing syncing, is now showing running. The version number here, this will turn green when it matches the latest version as well. That's obviously not the case in testnet because we're still running the RC versions on testnet at the moment. And we have here a message from Sentinel that the masternode status is invalid. So we can check the status of the masternode itself here, and we can figure out why that status is popping up. And the reason is obviously that we are waiting for the ProTX to appear on the chain. So I'm going to go through that process quickly because very little actually needs to change in the masternode here. It doesn't even need restarting because the BLS key is already in there. So I've got my Dash Core open here, and we're going to go down to the next step, which is the masternode registration here. We're going to be doing this from the Dash Core wallet. So I'm just going to continue following along with the instructions here. We'll get our debug console open. I'll clear out the old information that I had there, and we're going to look for our masternode outputs. And there's just one of those that I've got ready. That's the transaction ID and the index. So I'm going to take that information and I'm going to start putting it together in a text file here. The next step is to generate the BLS keys. So I'm going to get those keys ready. Oh no, wait, actually, we have those from here already. They were previously generated. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in there. And then we generate a couple more keys. This step, add the private key to the masternode configuration. Once again, that is not necessary in this case because we let Dashmate generate BLS keys for us, so they're already in the configuration. On to the next step of preparing the registration transaction. I'm going to get 1, 2, just two new addresses for the owner and the voter, and I'm going to get a transaction fee source from an address in the wallet that already has a balance. So back we go here. I'm going to run get new address twice and get these two new addresses. Copy that over here. Like that. So this will be owner, this will be voter, the BLS key is operator, public, and private. I find lining all the information up like this helps a bit to keep it in one place, keep it organized. Okay, and now we have the syntax for the registration transaction here, and I'm just going to replace each one of these one after the other with the information that we need. So the collateral hash goes in there, the collateral index is 1, the IP and port. I can get the IP address here. Because this is testnet, the port will be 19999. Then we have the owner's key here, the operator public key here, the voting address here, operator reward we're going to set to 0, and the payout address I'm going to just choose a couple of addresses from my wallet here that are holding some balance. We're going to put it on the deploy faucet, so I'm just going to copy that address and we'll use that one twice like that. So now our registration transaction is ready. It looks something like this. Back to our debug console, paste that transaction in there. We get this information out. I usually keep a copy of that as well. And we sign the transaction using sign message. Collateral address is given here, and the message to sign is given here. I take that command, run it here, and we get the signature, which I'm going to copy out and store again. And finally, we run the final registration command, protx register submit. The transaction we take from here. And the signature we take from here. There we go. It's quite a long line now. There it all is. It's a bit difficult to copy and paste, but I'm pretty sure it's all there. And here we have our protx hash. This is now what will identify the masternode. So I'm going to store that down here as well. And this is all the information that you would generally be storing to describe a masternode. DMT obviously does all of this for you, but you can manage the data yourself just as well. And now we need to wait for a block to be mined. In the meantime, let's have a look at some of the other commands here, and very soon we should see that the status of the masternode changes. In the meantime, I'm going to show that platform has started sync. This is now the platform chain, which only begins sync after the core chain is synced. And you can see that we've made some progress on the block height there. The remote block height here is currently 0 because we do not yet have an external block explorer. And for that reason, we can't calculate the synchronization progress because we don't know what the final block height is. As TenderDash is developed, more information will get filled out here. Okay, so here we are back. I've been watching a block explorer in the background, and that took around 5 minutes. So to mine a new block, so I'm just going to run the status command one more time, and let's see if our status has changed. And there we are. The masternode status is now ready, and we should be able to check the status of, oh, I forgot the masternode there. And we should get a little bit more information now on the status of the masternode itself, its registration, when it was last paid, when it's next paid, and so on like that. Because we haven't been paid yet, obviously this information will probably be incorrect. Okay, so I've just found out the status command no longer works because we have not updated Sentinel in this case. So I'm going to very briefly describe how to change the version of the images that we're using. If you type Dashmate config, then you can see the entire configuration of the masternode. This is actually huge. There's a lot of information in here, but it's all well organized, and we can jump in here and change certain things. So you can see that here we have core Sentinel Docker image. This needs updating. And so we can get and set this using Dashmate with the config command. Just config get core Sentinel Docker image will return the current version of that image. And we can now change that by setting set, and we want to use a newer version of Sentinel, like this. So that configuration setting is now changed, and I'm going to restart the masternode, and it should pull that new version and start the masternode with that version, I believe. So let's see what the status of those services are, if they're all running. And you can see here we did actually end up pulling the new version of Sentinel, so that's fantastic. Now let's try our masternode status command again. There we have it. And this -d not synced with network is appearing again because we obviously just restarted that that masternode, so it needed to start the sync at the last part again. The ProTX hash is visible here, the post penalty is visible here, the last paid block is visible here. This is obviously inaccurate because we've never been paid. This logic needs cleaning up a bit, but once you've been paid once, all those numbers should come right. If I run this one more time now, I'm hoping to be able to see that the Sentinel status is also working. But basically, if masternode status shows ready, then we're good to go. Okay, and that wraps up the video. We've seen here how to configure a masternode using the setup wizard, how to change individual settings in the configuration, and how to get the status in multiple different ways for multiple different services that are running on your -testnet masternode. I look forward and I strongly encourage everyone to try this out, try and break it, make bug reports, open issues, and even contribute code if you think you can fix any of the issues, particularly some of the issues that you've seen here today. Contributions are very welcome. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.